What if the man you married for love turned your shared life into a battlefield of clashing values, only to betray you with a forged divorce and a secret wedding, all while you were away on a business trip? That's the devastating reality I, Laura Evans, faced on a chilly evening in November 2025, as I stood outside the locked door of our Chicago apartment, my breath visible in the frosty air, my suitcase heavy in my hand. At 35, I'd built a stable life as a project manager for a foreign tech company, my office overlooking the city's skyline, the Willis Tower a constant sentinel in the distance. Raised by a single mother after my father's death when I was in kindergarten, I grew up in a modest apartment on the South Side, where happiness came not from wealth but from the warmth of our small family. My mother, my younger sister, and me. Despite financial struggles, we found joy in simple traditions, like baking cookies on Sundays, the scent of vanilla filling our tiny kitchen. Even as an adult with a decent salary, my frugal habits persisted, clipping coupons, saving for emergencies, a mindset born from childhood scarcity. I met Michael through a mutual acquaintance at a charity gala 3 years ago, his tailored suit and easy smile drawing me in. A wealthy entrepreneur with a logistics firm, he introduced me to a world of luxury I'd never known. Dinners at rooftop restaurants, weekend getaways to Lake Geneva. His kindness captivated me, his stories of building his business from scratch resonating with my own work ethic. We bonded over shared dreams of a stable future, and after a year of dating, he proposed on a snowy evening in Millennium Park, the city lights reflecting off the bean as I said yes, my heart full of hope. But the cracks appeared after our wedding, a small ceremony in a garden venue with fairy lights twinkling above. Our differing views on money and gender roles surfaced like fault lines. Michael envisioned a traditional household. He suggested I become a homemaker, assuming I'd embrace domestic roles, his voice casual over dinner one night. "You don't need to work, Laura. I'll take care of us," he'd said, sipping his wine, the candlelight casting shadows on his sharp features. I pushed back, my tone firm but calm. "I want to keep working until we have kids. It's not just about money, it's about my independence." He relented after a tense debate, but the reality of balancing my career with household chores proved exhausting. Despite my full-time role managing complex projects, coordinating teams across time zones, meeting tight deadlines, my days were consumed with domestic tasks. Cooking, cleaning, grocery shopping, all while Michael contributed nothing. He adopted a traditional husband's role, coming home to a prepared dinner, then retreating to the living room to unwind with a glass of scotch, the TV flickering with sports highlights. I'd watch him from the kitchen, my hands scrubbing dishes, resentment simmering as I juggled my workload and his expectations. Our apartment, a sleek high-rise rental with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of Lake Michigan, became a silent battleground. I'd hoped for partnership, for shared responsibilities, but Michael's indifference left me isolated, my days a blur of spreadsheets and laundry. The toll on our relationship was palpable. Our conversations grew shorter, our evenings colder, the intimacy we'd once shared fading like a distant memory. I hesitated to voice my dissatisfaction, fearing he'd insist I quit my job, a prospect I couldn't stomach after years of building my career. I clung to the hope that children might bridge the gap, imagining a family that would force us to realign, to find balance. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at work, I broached the subject over dinner, the scent of roasted chicken filling the air. "Michael, we should start considering having kids, right?" I said, my voice tentative, my fork pausing mid-air. He leaned back in his chair, a smirk playing on his lips. "Kids? You're quite energetic, considering you're tired from work and chores." I frowned, pushing forward. "It's not about that. I want to have children. We haven't been married long, but I'm over 30. Women have a limited time to conceive, and it's getting harder as I age. It's almost too late." His expression hardened, his tone dismissive. "We don't need kids. If we have one, you'll expect me to help, right? I'm busy with work. I won't help with child-rearing." His words stung, a rejection not just of my dream but of any shared responsibility. Declaring you won't help even before they're born is strange, isn't it? I countered, my voice rising. "I plan to raise them alone, But shouldn't you at least intend to help? It's your child too. He scoffed, leaning forward, his eyes cold. Child-rearing is your job. I'm working to support the family. I won't help. You'll just complain I don't help, making me the bad guy. You must have been indoctrinated with poverty and lots of kids since birth. We're not poor, we don't need kids. End of discussion. He stood abruptly, retreating to his room, leaving me alone in the living room, tears streaming down my face. His mockery of my upbringing, calling it an indoctrination of poverty, cut deep, a cruel jab at the life my mother had worked so hard to provide. After that night, our relationship deteriorated rapidly. Communication dwindled to curt exchanges, schedules, bills, nothing more. The possibility of children seemed a distant fantasy, my hope for a family with Michael fading with each passing day. I threw myself into work, taking on significant projects to distract from the emptiness at home, my days stretching into late nights at the office, the glow of my laptop a solitary companion. One day, as I prepared for a business trip to New York, a week-long conference to pitch a new client, I informed Michael, expecting his usual indifference. To my surprise, he was kind, his smile warm for the first time in months. "Have a good trip, Laura," he said, his voice softer. "I've got a big surprise for you when you return." Despite my disillusionment, his words stirred a faint hope, a flicker of the man I'd fallen in love with. That hope shattered when I returned. Exhausted from the trip, I arrived at our apartment late on a Sunday evening, the city lights twinkling below. My key wouldn't turn in the lock, the door unyielding. Confused, I knocked, and Michael opened it, his expression smug, a document in hand. "Surprise number one," he said, his tone dripping with disdain. I changed the locks. Before I could process, he delivered the second blow. "Surprise number two, we're getting divorced. I've already submitted the papers, forged your signature, and had a friend witness it. Oh, and I got married to Claire last week." My heart stopped, the betrayal slicing through me. Claire, his lover, a woman I'd suspected but never confirmed. "Sign this," he continued, thrusting a document at me. "It waives your rights to property division. You married me for my money, Laura. Don't pretend otherwise." I stared at him, the man I'd once loved, now a stranger. "That's not true," I protested, my voice shaking. "I want a mutual renunciation of property rights, publicly documented." He scoffed, retreating to his computer to revise the document, his contempt clear. "You're poor, Laura, always have been," he sneered, threatening to discard my belongings as I left, my suitcase still in hand, the cold Chicago night swallowing me whole. The marriage I'd fought for was over, but the battle had just begun. What if your husband's audacious attempt to erase your marriage with a forged divorce and a secret wedding unraveled under the weight of your calculated revenge, leaving him to face the consequences of his own lies? That's the fiery reckoning I, Laura Evans, orchestrated on the night of November 15, 2025, as I stood outside our Chicago apartment, the cold biting at my skin, my suitcase a heavy reminder of Michael's betrayal. At 35, a project manager for a foreign tech company, I just returned from a supposed business trip to New York, only to find the locks changed and Michael announcing our divorce. Papers he'd forged with a friend as a witness, along with his marriage to Claire, his lover, during my absence. "Sign this," he demanded, thrusting a document at me to waive property rights, accusing me of marrying him for his money, his scorn a dagger to my already wounded heart. I refused to sign, my voice steady despite the shock. "I want a mutual renunciation of property rights, publicly documented," I insisted, my years of frugality and independence fueling my resolve. Michael scoffed, retreating to his computer to revise the document, his contempt clear as he mocked my upbringing. "You're poor, Laura, always have been," he sneered, threatening to discard my belongings as I left, the door slamming behind me. I found a hotel nearby, the lobby's warmth a stark contrast to the icy betrayal, and checked into a modest room, the hum of the city outside my window a restless companion. Sitting on the edge of the bed, I replayed his words, anger replacing despair. Michael had underestimated me, but I wasn't the helpless wife he imagined. I was a woman who'd survived on less, who'd built a career through grit, and who wouldn't let his deceit stand. A few days later, Michael called in a panic, his voice trembling through the phone. "What have you done, Laura? Why are the police here?" I leaned back in my hotel chair, the city skyline glittering through the window, a calm satisfaction settling over me. "What do you mean?" I replied, feigning ignorance. "I haven't done anything. Why are you panicking?" His words tumbled out in a rush. "I was told to leave the apartment. You were still living there. That's not allowed. It's a new month. You're trespassing." I laughed softly, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "Trespassing? It's my house. Are you okay? Did you forget it was a company apartment I rented? I was the leaseholder, so naturally, you can't live there anymore." Michael's confusion was palpable. "That's ridiculous. How could you do this?" "I can't believe you didn't know," he shouted. I let my tone harden. "I'm not the one who should be accused of doing things on my own. Didn't I tell you that you can't just change the locks of a rental apartment? Even if you were the leaseholder, the owner is the apartment manager. You can't change the locks without informing them." He stammered. "Is that so?" I pressed on, my voice steady. "Also, I terminated the lease while you changed the locks. I was allowed to live there until this month. I was planning to return, but now you've unlawfully altered someone else's property, which could be criminal damage." His panic escalated. "Wait, why did you terminate it so early? Criminal damage? Is that why the police are at the front door now? I'm too scared to open it." I smiled, a cold satisfaction settling in. "So the police did come. Don't worry, it's probably not for trespassing or criminal damage. It's better to talk to them." "Why do I know about the police?" "Because I reported you for filing the divorce papers yourself." Michael's actions were unraveling. He'd committed forgery and fraudulent use of a private document, crimes that invalidated his divorce papers. Divorce could be filed by one party, but only with mutual agreement and personal signatures, neither of which he had. "The divorce papers you submitted are invalid," I continued, "and your marriage to Claire can't happen either." His voice cracked. "How do you know about Claire? Did you think I knew nothing?" I replied, my tone sharp. "I had a private detective agency thoroughly investigate your affair with Claire. It was a busy time at work. Coordinating with the agency was tough, but I took leave, despite my workload, to gather evidence and prepare documents. I knew you were bringing Claire home while I was on that business trip. I wasn't in New York for work. I was here, digging into your lies." Michael was speechless, the weight of my words sinking in. "Please, don't tell Claire I'm divorced," he pleaded, his voice small. I laughed, a bitter edge to it. "Why would I? There's no such fact to tell. When did you become divorced? That fake divorce paper is invalid, remember? Legally, you're still my husband, not divorced." His confusion deepened, and I drove the point home. "Since you committed adultery while legally my husband, Claire needs to pay compensation. I sent the demand for reparation to her house yesterday by express delivery. She didn't know you were married, did she? I can't withdraw the claim now." Michael's panic turned to desperation. "Should you be on the phone with me when you have to deal with the police?" "You're busy," he shouted, hanging up abruptly. I knew he'd rushed to Claire's house to intercept the letter, a registered mail addressed solely to her, impossible for him to retrieve without her consent. Hours later, Michael called again, his voice dispirited, recounting the inevitable confrontation. He'd waited outside Claire's house, a modern townhouse in Wicker Park, its brick facade glowing under the streetlights, hoping to snag the letter from the postman. "I'll take that envelope," he demanded when the postman arrived, his tone desperate. The postman, a stout man with a gray cap, frowned. "Who are you? You don't live here, right?" Michael, grasping at straws, lied. "I'm practically a resident here since I'm married. I have the right to receive the mail." The postman shook his head. "I can't give you this envelope. It's registered mail for Claire only." Michael's frustration boiled over. What? Give it to me, he shouted, lunging forward. Absolutely not, the postman replied, stepping back. If you're so eager, ask Claire for permission. At that moment, Claire emerged from the house, her auburn hair catching the light, confusion on her face. What's going on here? Michael, what's all this noise? She asked, her voice sharp. The postman handed her the envelope. This is registered mail for you. This man insisted on taking it. Sorry for the disturbance. Claire's eyes narrowed as she opened the letter, her expression shifting from confusion to fury. A demand for reparation? Michael, you were married. What's going on here? Michael stammered, his lies crumbling. It's just, she's an ex-wife from a long time ago. I was embarrassed to say I'm divorced. I'm sorry for keeping it secret. Claire's voice rose, incredulous. But it's strange, isn't it? We haven't been dating long, and a demand for reparation? If you were divorced before we started dating, there shouldn't be any problem, right? Michael's excuse was feeble. My ex-wife is crazy. Maybe she's demanding reparation out of spite because I got married. But the lie unraveled quickly. My letter included my contact information, and Claire called me directly. Over the phone, her voice trembling with anger, I explained everything. Michael's affair, the invalid divorce, the sham wedding ceremony he'd held while still legally married to me. Though they'd had a ceremony, Michael hadn't submitted the marriage registration, delaying it until April Fool's Day, likely due to uncertainty about the divorce's legality. Claire was devastated, her trust shattered, and Michael fled her house, his plan in tatters. He contacted me again, shame in his voice, and we agreed to meet at a nearby cafe, its warm lights a contrast to the cold evening. As I arrived, Michael looked defeated, his suit rumpled, his eyes downcast. Laura, please withdraw the reparation claim, he pleaded. Let's pretend we've been separated for a long time and officially divorced now. I can apologize to Claire for being secretly divorced and maybe cover it up. I leaned forward, my tone icy. You think I'm desperate to stay married to you? I was going to file for divorce anyway, but since you cheated, you'll pay reparation. He sneered, his old arrogance surfacing. Just trying to extort money from me, huh? Typical of the poor. You have such a poor heart. I smiled, a quiet triumph in my gaze. You're talking nonsense. Depending on my answer, everything can change. There's still an option where we don't divorce. If I say no, you can't reject it, meaning you can't marry Claire, and your marital status will be exposed. Michael's face paled, and he relented. Fine, I'll pay the reparation. Just divorce me now. Sign here. I nodded but added, and about property division, he interrupted, his voice rising. Property division? How much more do you want to take from me? Reparation should be enough. We agreed to waive property division, right? Let's make it official. I agreed, knowing the real surprise was yet to come. My financial truth a weapon he'd never anticipated. What if exposing your ex-husband's web of lies not only brought him to his knees but also paved the way for a life of true happiness, far from the shadows of betrayal? That's the liberating victory I, Laura Evans, achieved by December 2025, as I sat in a quaint Chicago cafe, the aroma of fresh coffee mingling with the crisp winter air seeping through the windows. At 35, I just finalized my divorce from Michael, a man whose deceit had nearly broken me. Forging divorce papers, marrying his lover Claire while still legally bound to me, and attempting to erase my rights to our shared life. But his downfall was my triumph, a testament to the resilience I'd honed growing up on the South Side, raised by a single mother who taught me to fight for what's right, even when the odds seemed stacked against me. After our tense cafe meeting, where Michael reluctantly agreed to pay reparation for his adultery, we'd gone to a public notary to formalize the agreement and waive property division, then to City Hall to submit legitimate divorce papers. He'd smirked as we parted, assuming he'd walked away unscathed. Glad we don't have to divide property, he'd said, his tone smug. By the way, do you even have assets after paying me reparation? Claire will claim damages for the wedding expenses, you know. I'd smiled, a quiet fire in my eyes. Still living in a fantasy, Michael? You committed marriage fraud. You had a wedding while still married. You think Claire still believes you. His confidence faltered as I continued. I heard from Claire directly. Also, weren't the guests at your wedding paid actors? You still owe them. Michael's face paled, his arrogance crumbling. You know about that. I haven't paid them yet. What does it matter to you? I leaned closer, my voice steady. You could have taken property division and been better off. My salary isn't $115,000 a year. It's per month. I'm a director at the American branch of a foreign company, earning $1.8 million annually. He scoffed, his disbelief clear. $180,000 a year, you mean? That can't be true. You're bad with numbers. I laughed softly, shaking my head. You're the one who's bad with numbers. It's $1.8 million. I've been saving most of it. Savings from before our marriage aren't part of property division, but there's still a considerable amount since we married. I could have claimed half in the division. His jaw dropped, realization dawning. You were my desk. After all the contempt, you think I'd undo the divorce, he stammered. I stood, adjusting my coat. The reparation is for the mental anguish you caused me. I'd like to claim more, honestly. Make sure to pay it, even in installments. Oh, and don't go back to that apartment. Your belongings have been moved to your parents' house. He collapsed into his chair, defeated, as I walked away, the cafe's warmth fading into the winter chill. Michael's fate unfolded swiftly. He returned to the apartment, now empty, and sat aimlessly until the manager called the police, detaining him for trespassing and obstructing public duties. His actions at Claire's house, trying to intercept the reparation letter, had already exposed his lies, and Claire, furious at the marriage fraud, demanded compensation for the wedding expenses, a cost his paid actors also chased. Michael's parents, strict and unyielding, took responsibility for his mess. After I met with them at their suburban home, a modest brick house surrounded by snow-dusted evergreens, they learned about Claire and the full extent of his deceit. They traveled to Claire's house, kneeling before her family in apology, settling her demands without pressing charges for marriage fraud, even covering the wedding costs. But their mercy ended there. Michael, exposed at his logistics firm for fraud and absent without leave during his detention, was fired, his career in tatters. He moved into his parents' shed, a cramped space with no electricity, given just $5 a day for food, deducted from his earnings at a relative's construction company. His father confiscated his wages, planning to make him work until every cent of my reparation and Claire's compensation was repaid, then kick him out, a harsh lesson for a man who'd once lived in luxury. I pursued legal action for his forgery of the divorce papers, unwilling to let him think money could erase his crimes. Michael offered a settlement, but I refused, entrusting the case to my lawyer, a sharp woman named Elise who navigated the courts with precision. The process took months, but Michael was convicted, the judge's gavel a final stamp on his accountability, a lesson that some wrongs can't be bought off. The legal battle, though time-consuming, was a burden I bore lightly, knowing it ensured justice, not just for me, but for anyone he might hurt in the future. By then, I'd been offered a position at my company's head office in London. A fresh start I embraced with open arms. Moving abroad alleviated my worries that Michael might resurface, seeking help or harboring resentment, his desperation a shadow I left behind. In London, the city's vibrant energy, buses rumbling past Big Ben, the Thames shimmering under grey skies, became my new backdrop. I threw myself into work, my office a sleek space with views of St. Paul's Cathedral, my role as a global director challenging but exhilarating. I thought work would be my partner for a while, a steady companion after the chaos of my marriage. But life had other plans. At a company gala, I met James, a 38-year-old executive from the Paris branch, his warm smile and thoughtful demeanor a stark contrast to Michael's cold arrogance. We bonded over late-night talks about travel and literature, our shared ambition tempered by a mutual desire for balance. I told him everything. My past, Michael's betrayal, the scars it left, and James listened, his understanding a balm to my wounds. 6 months later, I discovered I was pregnant, a quiet joy blooming amidst the whirlwind of my new life. James proposed on a rainy evening in Hyde Park, the scent of wet grass around us, and I said yes, my heart full of a love I'd thought I'd never find again. We're planning to marry after the baby arrives, a small ceremony with close friends, no grand gestures needed. James, enthusiastic about fatherhood, plans to take paternity leave, eager to co-parent, a cultural perspective so different from Michael's refusal to help. I want to be there for every moment, he said, his hand on my growing belly, his excitement infectious. I'll take maternity leave too, returning to work later, supported by a partner who values equality, a far cry from the traditional roles Michael had imposed. Reflecting on the journey, I see how Michael's betrayal, though painful, set me free. After years of enduring his contempt, I've grasped true happiness, a family built on mutual respect, a career that fulfills me, and a confidence that no one can take away. My mother, visiting London last month, held my hand as we walked along the South Bank, her pride evident. "You've always been a fighter, Laura," she said, her voice soft. "You turned his lies into your strength." She was right. Many suffer under selfish spouses, and while divorce isn't always the answer, enduring silence isn't a virtue. Honest discussions can lead to resolutions, but sometimes, divorce is the necessary path to joy. A lesson I lived, and one that led me to a life I'd always dreamed of, now within reach.